When I was getting ready to go to my daughter's for dinner, my lawyer texted me. "Call me immediately." I dialed his number. What he told me about my daughter shocked me. The scent of cedar hung in the air, a faint ghost of the closet where my suits had lived for decades. I adjusted the Windsor knot on my tie, my fingers moving with a slow, practiced motion. It was a familiar ritual for a Friday evening. At 68, routine becomes a kind of quiet friend. This tie, a deep navy blue with silver threads, had been a gift from my wife, Margaret. I still remembered the day she gave it to me, her eyes crinkling at the corners as she said it matched the flecks of gray in my hair. Now, 2 years after she was gone, it was just me, the tie, and the silence of a house that was too big for one man. I walked down the hall, my dress shoes making soft sounds on the oak floors we had installed together. On the entryway table, her photograph sat next to a small bowl of keys. I paused, a habit I couldn't break, and straightened the silver frame. "I'm off to see Amanda," I whispered to the smiling woman in the picture. "I'll tell you all about Ethan's soccer game when I get back." It was a silly thing, talking to a photograph, but the silence never answered back with judgment. These Friday dinners were the last bright thread connecting me to the life we had built. They were a promise I kept to her and to myself that I wouldn't just fade away into the quiet grief. I reached for my charcoal gray suit jacket, the one I saved for these occasions. It felt good to make an effort, to be the father Amanda could be proud of, the grandfather who showed up looking like he still had a place in the world. As my hand touched the wool sleeve, my phone vibrated on the table. A short, sharp buzz. I glanced at the screen, expecting a message from Amanda about what dessert to pick up. But the name was Robert Hayes, my lawyer, my friend of 30 years. The message was just 5 words, but they landed with the weight of an anvil. "Richard, don't go anywhere. Call me immediately. Urgent." A cold knot formed in my stomach. Urgent wasn't a word Robert used lightly. My first thought was for him. A heart attack? An accident? His wife, Mary? My fingers felt clumsy as I tapped his name and raised the phone to my ear. It rang twice before he picked up. His voice wasn't panicked. It was something worse. It was tightly controlled, stripped of all warmth. "Richard, are you alone?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes, Robert. I was just leaving for Amanda's." "What's wrong? Are you all right?" "I'm fine," he said, and the words offered no comfort. "Listen to me very carefully. Are you sitting down?" I sank onto the bench by the door, the jacket still clutched in my hand. "Robert, you're scaring me." He took a slow breath, the sound crackling over the line. "I should have called sooner. I've been reviewing your estate documents, the updates we made 6 months ago. As part of that, I requested comprehensive statements from your retirement funds, your investment accounts, the main portfolio." He paused. "Richard, there's a problem, a very big problem." I waited, the silence stretching. "The reports I've been getting look fine," I said, my own voice sounding distant. "Amanda sends them every quarter. The numbers are stable." "Richard," Robert said, and his voice was heavy with a sorrow that went beyond law. "The reports Amanda has been sending you are forgeries. They're doctored PDFs. The real statements from the banks tell a different story." The room seemed to tilt. The scent of cedar vanished, replaced by the metallic taste of fear. What are you talking about?" "Over the last 2 years, since Margaret passed, someone has been systematically liquidating your assets. The brokerage account is nearly empty. The retirement fund has been drained through a series of structured withdrawals. Your life savings, the $3 million you retired with, it's almost all gone." Each word was a physical blow. $3 million. My entire life's work, the security I had built, stone by painstaking stone, for my retirement, for Margaret's care, for my family's future. Gone. It didn't make sense. "That's impossible," I stammered. "No one can access those accounts but me." Robert's next words were quiet, but they shattered the world. "That's not true, Richard. One other person can. The person holding your durable power of attorney. The one you signed at the hospital when Margaret's illness got bad, so someone could manage things if you couldn't." I didn't need him to say the name. There was only one person. The person I was about to go see for dinner. The person I trusted more than anyone else in the world. "It's Amanda," Robert said, his voice a ghost. "She's been bleeding you dry." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. I leaned forward, my head in my hands, the polished oak floor swimming beneath me. My breath came in ragged gasps. It couldn't be. Not my Amanda. Not the little girl whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose college tuition I had paid without a second thought, whose wedding had been one of the proudest days of my life. My mind, a place that usually felt so orderly, so structured, became a whirlwind of fractured memories. Amanda sitting at my kitchen table a year ago, a stack of papers in front of her. "Don't you worry about a thing, Dad," she had said, her smile so bright and reassuring. "The market is volatile. I'll handle the logistics, make sure everything is protected. You just focus on healing." Another memory surfaced. Me, mentioning a large, unexpected property tax bill. Amanda, waving it off. "It's all taken care of, Dad. I moved some funds from the growth portfolio to cover it. It's all part of the plan." Her words had been a comfort then. Now they were weapons, each one a twist of the knife. The doctored reports she emailed every quarter, always with a cheerful note. The way she gently discouraged me from going to the bank myself, saying the tellers were new and the paperwork was a nightmare for someone my age. She wasn't protecting me. She was isolating me. She was building a cage of kindness around me while she looted the foundations of my life. Robert was still talking, his voice pulling me back from the abyss. "Richard? Richard, are you there? You need to listen to me. This is the most important part." I forced a sound from my throat. "Yes, you cannot let her know that you know. Do you understand me? You must go to that dinner. You must act as if nothing is wrong. Smile. Ask about Ethan. Let her believe she is still in complete control. If she suspects anything, she could move the last of the money, hide it somewhere we can never find it. She could destroy records. We need time, Richard. I need time to trace where it all went. From this moment on, you are not just my friend. You are my client, and we are at war. A war she doesn't know has started. A war. The word echoed in the ruins of my heart. I was a retired engineer. I built bridges, not battle plans. But as I sat there, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me, I felt something else underneath the shock. A cold, hard clarity. The engineer in me began to stir. A problem had been identified. The variables were unknown, the structure was failing. It was time to analyze the damage. Slowly, I pushed myself to my feet. My legs felt unsteady like a building whose supports had been kicked out. I walked to the hall mirror and stared at my own reflection. The man looking back at me was a stranger. His eyes were wide with a pain so profound it seemed to have aged him 10 years in 10 minutes. His hand, holding the phone, was trembling. I took a deep, shuddering breath. I had to put this man away. I had to become someone else. Someone who could walk into his daughter's house, kiss his grandson's forehead, and sit at a dinner table laden with food bought with his stolen life, and smile as if he hadn't a care in the world. "I understand," I said to Robert, my voice a hoarse whisper. "The performance begins now." "I don't know, kids. All I know is—" I shook my head, waving a dismissive hand at the folder. "I don't know, kids. All I know is that the yard is too big. The stairs are getting steeper, and Arizona sounds nice and simple. No charts, no portfolios, just sunshine." I was deliberately being the stubborn, simple-minded old man they wanted me to be. I could see the frustration flicker in Amanda's eyes before she masked it with another patient smile. "Let's just put the numbers aside for a moment," she said softly. "Think about Margaret. Think about the memories in this house. The garden she planted, the kitchen where we all cooked Thanksgiving dinner. You can't sell that, Dad. You just can't." The appeal to emotion was her trump card, the one she always played when logic failed. Hearing her use Margaret's memory as a tool of manipulation sent a shard of ice through my heart. I needed to get out of the room before my own mask cracked. I pushed myself up from my chair slowly. "You've given me a lot to think about. Let me make us some tea. My head is spinning a bit." As I walked toward the kitchen, I knew the real performance was about to begin. The moment the sound of me filling the kettle reached the living room, their pretense would drop. I stood just out of sight, my back against the wall, my own breathing silent. I counted the seconds. Then I heard Brian's voice, a low, anxious whisper. "You don't think he'll actually sell, do you?" "Amanda, the project in Mexico. The investors are getting nervous. We need another capital injection, and we need it last month." There was a rustle of paper, then Amanda's voice, no longer soft and cloying but cold and sharp as forged steel. "He won't sell," she hissed. "I won't let him. He's more confused than I thought. This whole Arizona fantasy is proof. But what if he just calls a realtor? What do we do?" Brian's voice was thin with panic. A pause. Then came the words that stopped my heart. "Then we take the next step," Amanda said, her voice devoid of any emotion. "I'll prove he's not competent to make that decision. I'll talk to Dr. Miller again, get a more definitive assessment. The power of attorney isn't enough to stop a sale if he's determined. We need a conservatorship. We need full control. It's the only way to protect our interests. To protect the family, protect the family." The lie was so profound, so complete, it was almost a work of art. I stayed in the kitchen for another 5 minutes, my hands gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles were white. I made a show of clattering cups and spoons before walking back into the living room with a tray of tea I had no intention of drinking. They were sitting in silence when I returned, the leather folder closed, their faces composed into masks of loving concern once more. They left soon after, promising to call, promising to help in any way they could. The moment their car pulled out of the driveway, I walked to the mantelpiece. My hand was shaking as I retrieved the tiny recording device from the birdhouse. I sat in my armchair, the one Margaret always called my thinking chair, and plugged the device into my phone with an adapter. I pressed play. The sound of my own voice, feigning confusion, filled the silence. Then their whispers, Brian's panic, and finally my daughter's voice, clear and cold, plotting to have me declared mentally incompetent, plotting to seize control of everything I had left. "We need a conservatorship." I listened to the recording twice. The first time, my heart shattered into a million pieces. The sound of my own child planning my legal execution was a pain beyond description. But the second time I listened, something else happened. The engineer inside me, the man who built bridges and understood stress points and structural integrity, took over. The pain was still there, but it was being encased in something harder, colder. The raw emotion was cooling, hardening into the clean, sharp lines of a blueprint. The heartbreak was immeasurable, but the evidence was undeniable. She had said it. He had confirmed the motive. Their masks were off and their true faces were now captured in a digital file. My daughter had just handed me the weapon I would use to dismantle her world. I had proof of intent. The war had truly begun. The days following that confrontation were a strange sort of limbo. I existed in a state of suspended animation, going through the motions of my life while a war was being plotted in the quiet corners of my mind and in the secure servers of Natalie Brooks' office. I pruned the roses. I read the newspaper. I played the part of Richard Miller, retired engineer. But every time the phone rang, my heart seized. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, and I knew it would not be a gentle landing. The call came on a Wednesday morning. The sky was a flat, indifferent gray. It was Robert Hayes. His voice was devoid of all preliminary chatter. "Richard," he said, "it's here. They filed it this morning." I didn't have to ask what it was. "Tell me," I said, sinking into my thinking chair. "A petition for conservatorship," Robert read from the document, his voice a steady, legal drone that made the obscene words sound even colder. "Filed by Amanda Miller, petitioner, regarding Richard Miller, respondent. The petition alleges a significant and recent cognitive decline, citing, erratic behavior, memory loss, and poor financial judgment." My hand tightened on the armrest. "Poor financial judgment?" "Yes," Robert continued, his tone unwavering. "The primary evidence cited is your sudden and irrational decision to liquidate your primary residence, which they claim puts you at grave risk of financial destitution and homelessness. They're painting the very idea you leaked as proof of your incompetence." I closed my eyes. They were twisting my own bait and trying to hang me with it. The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot flush that spread from my chest to my face, my own daughter telling a court of law that I had lost my mind. "It gets worse," Robert said, his voice hardening. "The petition includes several supporting declarations. There are sworn statements from two of her concerned friends. I've already run their names, Richard. They're both investors in Brian's Mexico project. They testify that during recent social encounters you appeared confused, disoriented, and emotionally volatile. I've never met these people in my life," I whispered, the words barely audible. "I know," Robert said. "And to cap it all off, there's a preliminary psychological evaluation. It's signed by a Dr. Alan Miller. No relation, I checked. He states that based on a brief informal conversation arranged by Amanda, he has serious concerns about your ability to manage your own affairs. It's a paid opinion, Richard. A piece of medical theater designed to look legitimate." I felt the air leave my lungs. It was a comprehensive character assassination, a legal document designed to strip me of my name, my autonomy, my very identity as a competent adult. They were trying to turn me into a non-person, a ward of the state. Also, they could have unrestricted access to the last of my assets. He paused, letting the weight of his final words land. "She has petitioned the court to determine if you are competent." "Fine. Now, we are going to show that court who the truly incompetent one is." The weeks leading up to the conservatorship hearing were a blur of methodical, relentless preparation. The initial shock had receded, leaving in its place a cold, clear purpose. The machine of justice, once a distant and abstract concept, was now humming to life in the quiet rooms of Robert's office and in the determined silence of my own home. We were no longer reacting. We were building a case so solid, so irrefutable that it would collapse the world my daughter had built on lies. We worked on 3 separate fronts, each of us a soldier in a quiet war. Chloe's front was a digital battlefield of numbers and transactions. In her sterile, minimalist office, surrounded by glowing monitors, she became the architect of Amanda's downfall. Day after day, she pieced together the scattered fragments of my financial life. What she finally produced was not just a report, it was a weapon. A document nearly 3 inches thick, bound in stark black, its pages filled with meticulously organized evidence. There were color-coded charts that showed the steady outflow from my retirement accounts, and corresponding charts showing the identical inflow into Elysian Designs, LLC. There were timelines that mapped every major withdrawal to a significant purchase made by Amanda or Tom, a new car, a down payment on a second property, a lavish European vacation. The centerpiece was a breathtakingly complex flowchart, a map of the crime, as Chloe called it, showing how my money was funneled through the shell company, invested in the failing Mexican resort, and then, in some cases, cycled back into their personal accounts under the guise of management fees. It was a masterpiece of financial forensics, a story of grand larceny told in the cold, unforgiving language of spreadsheets and bank statements. Robert's front was the law itself. He transformed his office into a war room. I would visit him and find him surrounded by stacks of legal books, yellow sticky notes flagging key precedents and statutes. He was constructing the legal framework of our case, building the arguments that would turn Chloe's data into a legal verdict. He printed out sections of the Colorado state law on elder financial abuse, highlighting the specific clauses that defined it not just as theft, but as a breach of fiduciary duty, a betrayal of trust. He prepared cross-examination questions for Amanda's paid witnesses, designed to expose their financial ties to her and Tom. He drafted motions to compel, to subpoena, to ensure that no stone was left unturned. He was building our shield and sharpening our sword, preparing to walk into that courtroom not just to defend me, but to prosecute them. My front was perhaps the quietest, but also the most personal. It was the battle for my own sanity in the eyes of the law. The court had appointed an independent psychiatrist, Dr. Evelyn Reed, to conduct a competency evaluation. I met her in a calm, sunlit office that smelled of tea and old books. Amanda had painted a picture of me as a confused, irrational old man. I decided the most powerful counter-argument was simply to be myself. I did not speak of the fraud or the betrayal. Instead, I spoke about my life. I told her about my career as a civil engineer, about the bridges I helped design, the complex calculations for load-bearing structures, the water management systems I had overseen for the city of Denver. I spoke with the precision of a man who had spent 40 years of his life making sure things didn't fall down. I described my daily routine, my budget, the way I managed my household expenses down to the penny. Dr. Reed listened, her expression unreadable, asking sharp, insightful questions. At the end of our second session, she closed her notebook and looked at me. "Mr. Miller," she said, "based on our conversations and the tests I've administered, you are one of the most cognitively sound and methodical individuals I have evaluated this year. The decision to sell your house, from a purely logical standpoint of simplifying one's life in retirement, is anything but irrational. We were building our case, brick by solid brick. But it was Chloe, in the final days before the hearing, who found the crack in the foundation, a crack that would bring the entire rotten structure crashing down." She called Robert on a Tuesday night. I was at his office, reviewing my testimony. Robert put the call on speakerphone. Chloe's voice was different. The usual professional calm was replaced by something else, a quiet, contained horror. "Robert, Richard," she began. "I was doing a final cross-reference of Eleanor's estate documents, specifically her life insurance policies, just to ensure we had a complete picture. I found something." She explained that Eleanor had a significant life insurance policy, one that she had designated years ago to be paid into a trust for our grandson, Leo's college education. "But," Chloe continued, her voice tight, "I found an amendment form, a change of beneficiary request. It was filed 3 weeks before Eleanor passed away. The primary beneficiary was changed from the Leo Miller Educational Trust to Amanda Miller, daughter." A cold dread washed over me. I remembered Eleanor in those last weeks, weak, often disoriented from the pain medication. "There's more," Chloe said. "I've looked at dozens of Eleanor's signatures from over the years, checks, legal documents, letters." Her signature was always strong, elegant. "The signature on this form, it's shaky, but it's also wrong. The angle of the E is off. The loop on the R is too tight. It looks less like the signature of a sick person and more like the signature of a person trying to imitate someone else." The room went silent. The implications were monstrous. This wasn't just about stealing from a living father. This was about stealing from a dying mother. It was about stealing her last gift to her own grandchild. Robert stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. For a long moment he said nothing. When he turned around, his face was a mask of cold fury. He picked up his phone. "Chloe," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Send me a high-resolution scan of that signature immediately." He paused, then dialed another number. "Yes, this is Robert Hayes," he said into the phone. "I need to speak to Daniel Ishikawa. Tell him it's an emergency. I need an expert opinion on a potential forgery, and I need it yesterday." He hung up and looked at me, his eyes blazing. "The terrible truth just got a whole lot worse, Richard. But so did our case." The courtroom was a world of polished wood and hushed reverence, a place where life-altering decisions were made under the impassive gaze of the state seal. The air was thick with a tension that felt heavier than sound. I sat beside Robert, my hands resting on my knees, my back straight. I was not a defendant, but I felt as though my entire life was on trial. Across the aisle, Amanda sat with Tom, her expression a carefully crafted mask of daughterly concern. She looked every bit the part of the hero, the one stepping in to save a father from himself. Her lawyer, a man with silver hair and a voice as smooth as his suit, began first. He painted a masterful picture of my decline. He spoke of a loving daughter worried about a father lost in grief, a man making sudden, irrational decisions that threatened his own well-being. He called his first witness, a so-called family friend, who recounted a recent conversation where I had seemed terribly confused and obsessed with a bizarre plan to move away. Then he called the next, another of Amanda's business associates, who described my behavior at a charity event as distracted and emotionally fragile. It was a flawless, damning performance. To anyone who didn't know the truth, I was exactly who they claimed I was, a broken old man who needed saving. When it was Robert's turn, the energy in the room shifted. He did not rise with fire and fury. He rose with the quiet, deadly calm of a man who knew he held all the cards. "The petitioner has painted a picture of a man in cognitive decline," he said, his voice filling the room. "We would like to begin by presenting the court with a more accurate assessment." He didn't call me to the stand. He called Dr. Evelyn Reed. The court-appointed psychiatrist took her seat, a picture of professional neutrality. Robert walked her through her evaluation of me. "Dr. Reed," he asked, "in your expert opinion, did you find Mr. Miller to be suffering from any cognitive impairment that would render him incapable of managing his own affairs?" Dr. Reed looked directly at the judge. "Quite the opposite, counselor," she stated, her voice clear and firm. "Mr. Miller exhibits exceptional cognitive function for a man his age. His memory is precise, his reasoning is sound, and his understanding of complex financial and logistical matters is, frankly, superior to that of most of my clients. He is, in my professional opinion, fully competent." A quiet murmur rippled through the courtroom. I saw Amanda's back stiffen. The first brick in her wall of lies had just been pulled loose. "Next," Robert announced, "the prosecution calls Chloe Armstrong." Chloe walked to the stand with the same quiet confidence I had seen in Robert's office. She was sworn in, and a large screen flickered to life behind her. "Ms. Armstrong," Robert began, "you are a forensic accountant. Could you please explain to the court what this chart represents?" For the next 45 minutes, Chloe methodically, clinically, and devastatingly dismantled Amanda's entire narrative. With the aid of the projector, she walked the court through the map of my stolen life. She showed the steady, monthly withdrawals from my accounts. She showed the identical deposits into the shell company, Elysian Designs, LLC. She showed the photographs of Tom's Porsche, of Amanda's jewelry, of their lavish vacations, with dates that corresponded perfectly to the largest withdrawals. The courtroom was utterly silent, captivated by the cold, hard story the numbers were telling. Amanda's face had gone pale. Tom was staring at his hands, unable to look up. Then Robert played the audio recording, my voice feigning weariness. Tom's anxious whisper about needing more capital for the Mexico project. And finally, Amanda's voice, sharp and cold, slicing through the courtroom's silence. "If I have to, I'll prove he's not competent to make that decision. The power of attorney isn't enough. We need a conservatorship. We need full control." A collective gasp went through the room. The mask of the loving daughter had been torn away, revealing the cold face of a predator. Amanda sank lower in her chair, her eyes wide with disbelief, as if she couldn't comprehend that her own words had returned to condemn her. Robert let the silence hang for a long moment before delivering the final, fatal blow. He turned to the judge, his voice now resonating with a righteous anger he had kept contained until this moment. "Your Honor," he said, his voice ringing with clarity, "what you have seen here is a story of profound greed and betrayal. But the terrible truth is that this story is even darker than it appears. This is not just about the abuse of a living father. This is a plot that began when this woman's own mother was on her deathbed." He called his final witness Mr. Daniel Ishikawa, a renowned handwriting expert. Robert placed a document on the projector, the life insurance amendment. "Mr. Ishikawa," Robert asked, "can you tell the court about the signature of Eleanor Miller on this document?" The expert adjusted his glasses. "The signature of Eleanor Miller on this page is a forgery," he stated unequivocally. "While it mimics her letter forms, it lacks the natural speed and pressure of a genuine signature. It shows signs of slow, careful drawing. It is not the signature of a frail, sick woman. It is the signature of a healthy person attempting to copy a signature they have studied. The courtroom felt as if all the air had been sucked out of it. Robert presented his final exhibits, the official insurance payout confirmation, showing a seven-figure sum deposited directly into Amanda's personal account weeks after Eleanor's death, and a final damning document from the state registrar. No entity named the Leo Miller Educational Trust had ever been filed or created. She hadn't just stolen from me, she had stolen her dying mother's last gift to her own son. That was the moment everything broke. Tom, who had been pale and still, slowly turned his head to look at his wife. The expression on his face was not one of anger, but of pure, unadulterated horror. He was a thief, but he had not known he was married to a monster. He was seeing her, truly seeing her for the first time, and the sight was breaking him. But it was Amanda who truly shattered. The intricate web of lies, the carefully constructed facade, the years of manipulation, it all came crashing down on her at once. A sound escaped her throat, a choked, guttural sob. Her mask of composure didn't just crack, it disintegrated. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders heaving in great, wrenching sobs. The brilliant, controlled strategist was gone, replaced by a common thief caught in the act, her crimes laid bare for the entire world to see. And in that moment, in the ruins of her deception, the final judgment was rendered, not by the judge, but by the cold, inescapable weight of the truth. The sound of Amanda's sobbing was the only thing that filled the courtroom as the judge, a woman with eyes that had seen too much to be easily shocked, delivered her ruling. Her voice was cold steel. "The petition for conservatorship is denied," she declared, her gaze fixed on Amanda. "What has been presented here today is not a case of a daughter's concern, but a shocking and predatory abuse of this court and of the petitioner's own father." She didn't stop there. Effective immediately, this court orders a temporary freeze on all known assets belonging to Amanda and Tom Miller. Furthermore, I am referring this entire case file, including the evidence of financial malfeasance and forgery, to the district attorney's office for immediate criminal investigation. The finality in her voice was absolute. The war was over. Months later, the late spring sun warmed my shoulders as I knelt in the garden, the rich smell of soil filling the air. The legal battles were behind me now, a storm that had passed, leaving a scarred but clean landscape. Amanda and Tom were facing a future dictated by the consequences of their choices, a future that no longer involved me. I heard the back door slide open and looked up to see my grandson, Leo, walking towards me. At 16, he had his mother's sharp intelligence in his eyes, but his grandmother's kindness in his smile. He sat on the grass beside me. I wiped my hands on my trousers and reached for a crisp manila envelope I had placed on the garden bench. I handed it to him. "There's something I want you to have," I said. He opened it and pulled out the document inside. His eyes scanned the first few lines. "The Leo Miller Educational Trust." "Your grandmother," I began, my voice thick with emotion, "wanted to make sure you had the best possible start in life. She set everything up for you. Things got complicated for a while, but we fixed it. Robert and I. This is hers. This is for you." Leo looked from the paper to my face, his eyes shining with unshed tears. He didn't say anything. He just leaned forward and wrapped his arms around me, his grip tight and strong. I held him close, my own eyes looking up past the blooming roses, past the tall oak tree to the vast, clear blue sky. In that moment, a profound sense of peace settled over me. I had lost a daughter to a darkness I could never have imagined. But in fighting my way back into the light, I had saved the future of my grandson. I had honored my wife's memory. And I had finally, truly, reclaimed myself. The battle was over. The silence in my heart was no longer one of grief, but of a quiet, hard-won peace. This story serves as a stark reminder that true strength is often forged in silence. It reveals how easily blind trust can be weaponized by greed, turning family into the cruelest of adversaries. The ultimate lesson is not about revenge, but about reclamation. It teaches that dignity, once stolen, can be reclaimed through the methodical pursuit of facts. Victory is not won with anger, but with patience, evidence, and the unwavering resolve to let the truth, no matter how painful, speak for itself. True justice is found not in shouting, but in the quiet, undeniable weight of the record. Don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and click on the next video on your screen to continue the journey.